History remembers emperors, generals, and saints. But the shadows beneath their marble statues, those it forgets. Beneath Rome's golden domes and temples, once walked a creature whose name no historian dared to write. A woman born of suffering, reborn through vengeance, and remembered only in whispers, Mila, the vampire of Rome. Her story begins not with glory, but with hunger. In the 3rd century AD, the Roman Empire groaned under its own weight. Plague crept through crowded tenements. Gold lost its shine as the empire's hunger for conquest devoured itself. And in the backstreets, where no senator ever walked, the gods had gone silent. It was here, in a narrow alley near the Subura district, that an 18-year-old girl gasped for breath between the stones. Her name was Mila, a name meaning grace, though grace had long abandoned her life. The daughter of a laundress and a bricklayer, both swallowed by poverty and Rome's cruelty. She was hungry, beaten, and bleeding, but her eyes still burned with something Rome could not crush: defiance. That night, as her blood soaked into the cracks of the alley, something ancient watched. Not a god, not a demon, something older than both. A shadow that had walked since before Babylon rose. Her name, Nahim. Nahim was not a monster by choice. She had once been mortal until Lilith herself had chosen her as a vessel of rage. For centuries, she had fed upon kings and killers alike, balancing her existence between hunger and conscience. But that night in Rome, something stirred in her forgotten heart. She saw the dying girl, and she hesitated. Nahim's voice, quiet, ancient. "You have been wronged, little one. Tell me, if I give you life again, what will you do with it?" Mila's lips trembled, blood in her teeth. Mila whispers, "I'll make them pay." The vampire smiled, not with joy, but with recognition. "Nahim, then you shall live in a way few ever do." The Rome of 225 AD was a paradox, a city of marble gods and starving mortals. By day, chariots thundered across forums where statues gleamed. By night, the alleys were jungles. Crime ruled where law could not reach, and cruelty was not punished, it was celebrated. Historians describe this period as the crisis of the 3rd century. Famine, political assassinations, and barbarian raids tore through the empire. But for the poor, every day was a crisis. Rome's greatness had always been built on someone else's suffering: slaves, widows, orphans, and the voiceless. Mila had grown up watching this truth. Her father died crushed under a collapsing wall at a public works site. Her mother perished a year later of fever. Mila survived, barely cleaning floors, carrying water, sometimes selling herself for food. Rome was not kind to the weak. She dreamed of escape, of the countryside, of anything beyond the stink of the Subura. But Rome has a way of keeping its children close, especially the broken ones. One night, returning from work at a tavern, she was cornered by 3 men, soldiers off duty, drunk and cruel. They laughed as they toyed with her pleas. Their laughter was the last sound she heard before pain became her whole world. Then darkness. Hours later, she awoke alone, crawling through filth. No one helped. No one even looked. That's when Nahim found her. The alley was silent except for Mila's shallow breaths. Nahim knelt beside her, pale, ancient, a figure cloaked in shadow and starlight. There are moments when death pauses, not to spare you, but to ask if you still wish to live. Nahim touched Mila's cheek, cold fingers against burning skin. And then, with the precision of ritual, she drew a blade and cut her wrist. A droplet of black-red blood shimmered like a ruby in moonlight. "Nahim, drink and remember what they did." Mila obeyed. The world convulsed. Her body seized. Pain erupted like molten iron. Her heart stopped, then started again, but differently. Sight, hearing, smell all amplified until they were unbearable. She heard the heartbeat of every rat, the drip of water 2 streets away, the thunder of her own rebirth. When the agony ended, she was not the same. She was no longer prey. Nahim teaching Mila to hunt, how to listen, how to move unseen, how to feed without leaving corpses that draw attention. They preyed upon Rome's predators, thieves, abusers, corrupt guards. Each kill precise, ritualistic. Mila's rage became focus. It said that the first kill is the truest mirror. It shows you what kind of creature you've become. Mila's reflection was vengeance. She swore to Nahim she would find those who wronged her. Nahim only nodded. But remember, vengeance is a fire that never stops burning. Weeks passed. Rome buzzed with rumors, men found dead, pale and bloodless. Officials blamed disease or street gangs. But the poor whispered, a spirit of justice walks among us. Mila hunted her first abuser in the alleys near the tavern where she had once worked. He was drunk again, boasting of his power, of what he could do without consequence. When the lights dimmed, she stepped from the shadows. "Mila, do you remember me?" He laughed at first until her eyes caught the torchlight. They glowed with a crimson shimmer that froze him. "Mila, you took my life once. Tonight, I take it back." His scream died before anyone heard it. Only silence remained and a trace of blood on the stones. Rome's criminal class thrived because fear belonged only to the weak. Mila reversed that order. Her story mirrors every oppressed voice that history ignored, a fantasy of justice where none existed. In a way, her legend was a protest against patriarchy, against power, against impunity. Over the next year, Mila hunted the others. Each kill cleaner, colder. She began to enjoy the hunt, not for blood, but for the control she had never known. Nahim warned her, power tastes like freedom, but it binds tighter than chains. Mila didn't listen. By the year's end, the three were gone, and Mila, now immortal, untouchable, walked the streets she once crawled. But vengeance brought no peace. The ache of humanity remained. Years turned into decades. Decades became centuries. Empires fell and rose, and Mila watched it all. Historical accounts from later centuries mention unexplained killings among Rome's nobility, drained bodies, wounds with no weapon, servants vanishing. Could these legends trace back to Mila? Perhaps. Or perhaps they are echoes, humanity's way of personifying guilt. Into 71 AD, when Emperor Aurelian rebuilt the city walls, rumors spread of workers disappearing during night shifts. Some said a lady in black guarded the ruins. In reality, Mila had taken residence in catacombs beneath the old temples, feeding rarely, killing selectively only those who preyed upon others. As Rome evolved, she adapted disguises, names, languages. She became a courtesan in one age, a healer in another, a nun during the Christian persecutions. Each life a mask, each mask another step from her humanity. Loneliness became her constant companion. She could not love, not for long. Every mortal relationship ended in tragedy or betrayal. Even Nahim, her maker, eventually vanished into the sands of time. Some say she walked east to Babylon. Others say she perished in sunlight, seeking release. Mila endured. In her solitude, she began recording her thoughts carved into stone fragments hidden beneath Roman baths. Fragments later found mention. Eternity is not life without death. It is death without rest. Her words, like her name, never entered history books. Archaeologists have indeed found so-called vampire burials in late Roman Italy, skeletons with stones jammed into mouths, stakes driven through ribs. These rituals reflected a fear that some dead could walk again. Whether inspired by Mila's myth or not, they reveal how deeply the idea of the revenant haunted the Roman imagination. By the 4th century, as Christianity rose and pagan gods fell silent, Mila became the embodiment of the old world's guilt, a remnant of an age that refused salvation. Centuries pass in a blur of dust and silence. The empire collapses. Rome shrinks into a ghost of its former self, and Mila sleeps deep in a crypt beneath the baths of Caracalla. She wakes in the 15th century. The world is changed, but still corrupt. She walks again under new names: Lucia, Morel, Lady Maris. Always observing, rarely intervening until cruelty calls her back. A nobleman purchases street orphans to use as test subjects for alchemical purification. Bodies pile in the Tiber. One night, he vanishes, his estate found soaked in blood, his heart impaled on a silver stylus. The guards whisper of a woman in red seen leaping across rooftops. Once again, fear returns to the powerful. The Renaissance celebrated rebirth, but also exposed hypocrisy. Art flourished while cruelty persisted. In every era, Mila becomes a mirror of societies, since the vengeance it secretly craves, yet publicly condemns. Fast forward centuries, more industrialization, wars, empires rise and fall again. But some crimes never change. When humanity repeats its sins, the shadows repeat their justice. Rome, now buzzing with neon light and traffic. A human trafficking ring operates from behind a luxury facade. Surveillance cameras flicker. One by one, the perpetrators vanish. Detectives find only drained bodies, each branded with a mark, a small and carved into the wrist. The case remains unsolved. They say monsters are fiction, but maybe fiction is how we remember the things that never die. Mila's story is not just horror. It's tragedy, resistance, and survival. She represents the countless voices silenced by a power reborn in legend to claim justice. For 2 centuries, she haunted Rome's elite, the men who thought they ruled forever. In doing so, she reminded the empire that every cruelty births its own avenger. But even monsters tire. And perhaps, deep in the city's ruins, she still watches, not to feed, but to guard. Waiting for another girl left bleeding in the dark. Because myths like Mila's endure for a reason. They tell us what history refuses to, that evil repeats itself, but so does defiance. Empires fall, names fade. But every time injustice rises, something ancient awakens to meet it. Maybe she's still out there. Maybe she's closer than we think.